I'm Sienna Bellamy, 39 years old, and 3 weeks ago my father said one thing that made me cut him out of my life forever. When I became homeless with my 17-year-old son and asked my father for help, he looked me straight in the eyes and told me there was no room for me in his 4-bedroom house. The same house where my 16-year-old half-sister has 3 bedrooms to herself, one for sleeping, one for her books, and one for her art. What my father didn't know was that someone had been watching all along, and they had plans of their own. Before I continue, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back 2 years to the day my husband walked out and my life started falling apart. 2 years ago, I had $45,000 in savings, a decade of experience as an interior architect, and what I thought was a stable life. Then Derek happened. My husband didn't just have an affair with his coworker, he didn't just pack his bags and disappear without a word. Before he vanished, he drained our joint savings account, every single penny, and left behind $28,000 in credit card debt with both our names on it. I had to pay that debt alone. If I didn't, my credit score would tank, and I'd never be able to rent an apartment anywhere. 8 months ago, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. She fought for 6 months. I watched her wither away in a hospital bed, held her hand when she took her last breath, and buried her with what little I had left. The medical bills and funeral costs came to $35,000. I called my father once, desperate. "Dad, I need help. Mom's treatments are expensive and That's your mother, Sienna, my ex-wife. She stopped being my responsibility 20 years ago. Diane wouldn't approve." He didn't come to the funeral either. His excuse? Olivia had a piano recital that weekend. 3 months ago, the design firm where I'd worked for 10 years filed for bankruptcy overnight. No severance. They still owed me 2 months of back pay, about $9,000. My lawyer said it could take 6 months to a year to see any of it, if ever. I applied for unemployment benefits immediately. They told me there was a processing delay, 6 to 8 weeks because of the complicated bankruptcy paperwork. I used what little cash I had left to pay rent for 3 months, praying I'd find another job. The interior design industry was frozen. No one was hiring. Then the eviction notice came. "Mom," Ethan said that night, still wearing his green Starbucks apron. "I asked my manager for more hours. She's letting me work weekends, too. We just need to save up for the deposit, right? How much more do we need?" I looked at my son, my 17-year-old son who woke up at 4:30 every morning to make coffee for strangers, and felt my heart crack. "Don't even think about dropping out of school," I told him. "Your SATs are more important. I'll figure something out." 2 years ago, I had everything. Now I had my ex-husband's debt, my mother's funeral bills, and a bankrupt company that owed me money. Life doesn't warn you when it decides to collapse. Ethan started working at Starbucks when my mother first got sick. He wanted to help. Insisted on it, actually. Now he was bringing in about $900 a month, which covered gas, our phone bills, and cheap groceries from Walmart. But a new apartment in Portland needed at least $4,000 up front for deposits and first month's rent. We were nowhere close. The thing is, my father's neglect didn't start when I became homeless. It started the moment he married Diane. I was 18 when I found out about the affair. I came home from school early and saw them through the living room window. My father and this woman I'd never seen before, kissing in our house, on our couch, while my mother was at work. My mother never recovered from that betrayal. She spent the next 20 years carrying that wound, and I watched it slowly hollow her out. When I graduated from college, my father didn't show up. Diane was pregnant with Olivia, and she needed someone with her at all times. When I got married, he gave us $500 as a wedding gift. When Olivia was born, he bought Diane a $15,000 diamond ring to celebrate. I still have his Facebook page bookmarked, not because I check it often, but because it's evidence of something I need to remember. Every photo is the same: Richard, Diane, and Olivia. Caption: My whole world. I don't exist in his world. I never have. I sent Olivia birthday presents every year. Not once did I receive a thank you. The night after my mother's funeral, Ethan sat beside me in the car, our home now, and asked the question I'd been dreading. Mom, did I do something wrong? Is that why Grandpa never calls me? I finally told him the truth. About the affair. About Diane. About how his grandmother spent 20 years heartbroken because of the man who was supposed to be his grandfather. Grandma always said I was hardworking, Ethan whispered. She said I was just like you. She would have been proud of me, right? She was proud of you, I said. She told me that every single day. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I miss her, Mom. I miss her too, baby. Every single day. We'd been sleeping in our car for 3 nights when I finally broke. Walmart parking lot. Space 247. I memorized that number because I stared at the faded paint every night, trying not to think about how we'd ended up here. Ethan's alarm went off at 4:30. I watched him sit up in the back seat, rubbing his eyes, his breath fogging in the cold morning air. He grabbed his Starbucks uniform from the plastic bag we used as a makeshift closet. I'll be at the store before 5, he said. I can shower in the employee bathroom before anyone else gets there. He thought I didn't know. He thought he'd hidden it well. The way he snuck into work early to clean up. The way he changed in the restroom stall. The way he never mentioned our living situation to his coworkers. He didn't want their pity. He didn't want to lose his job. I watched him drive away in the dark, and I saw what this was doing to him. The shadows under his eyes, the way his clothes hung looser on his frame, the small burn mark on his hand from the espresso machine that he brushed off as nothing. He was 17 years old, waking up before dawn in a car to go make coffee for strangers, then coming back to do homework under streetlights because we couldn't afford to keep the car running for the interior light. His SATs were in 2 weeks. He'd been studying on his phone, squinting at practice problems in the orange glow of the parking lot lamps. I was still waiting on unemployment benefits, 5 weeks into the application, at least 2 or 3 more to go. The lawsuit against my old company could take months. The shelter had a 6-week waiting list. I had no more options. Well, one option. I picked up my phone and stared at my father's contact. The man who couldn't be bothered to show up to my mother's funeral. The man who'd erased me from his perfect family portrait. I watched my son disappear into the pre-dawn darkness to work a job that would barely cover our gas money, and I made my decision. Even if it meant calling the man who hadn't been there when Mom took her last breath, I had to try. Not for me. For Ethan. My father picked up on the 4th ring. Sienna. Not a greeting, just my name, flat and cold. Dad, I need to talk to you. It's important. I'm busy. Olivia's birthday party is next week and, Dad, Ethan and I are homeless. Silence. I told him everything. The bankruptcy. The eviction. The car. I told him about Ethan working 20 hours a week while still going to school, waking up at 4 in the morning studying for his SATs under streetlights. We just need a place to stay for 2 weeks, I said. Just until I find a job and we can get an apartment. Ethan has his SATs coming up. He needs a real desk, a real bed. There's no room. I almost laughed. You have 4 bedrooms. Olivia needs them. All 3 of them? She has her bedroom, her library, and her art studio. She's developing her talents, Sienna. You wouldn't understand. Ethan could sleep on the couch, the floor, anywhere. No, his voice hardened. Ethan isn't Diane's grandchild. He makes her uncomfortable. I couldn't speak. My father continued, and I heard something ugly creeping into his voice. Besides, the kid makes coffee for a living. That's the future you raised him for? Olivia is preparing for art school. Do you see the difference? Still, I couldn't form words. Then Diane's voice came through the line. She must have grabbed the phone. Sienna, you're 39 years old and you still can't take care of yourself. Your husband left you. Your mother died. Your company fired you. Maybe you should ask yourself if you're the problem. The line went dead. I sat in the driver's seat of my car, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. My father had just mocked my son for working, for helping our family survive, and Diane, the woman who destroyed my mother's marriage, had just told me that my mother's death was somehow my fault. I called back. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out steady, steadier than I expected. I wasn't finished, I said when my father picked up. Sienna, 4 bedrooms, Dad. Olivia needs. Ethan wakes up at 4 in the morning. Did you know that? Silence. He drives to Starbucks before 5. He showers in the employee bathroom because we don't have running water. He works 8 hours, then he does his homework in a parking lot. He's 17 years old. That's not my. You mocked him for working, for helping his family. I didn't mock. You said, the kid makes coffee for a living. Those were your exact words. My father's breath was heavy through the phone. I heard him struggling to find a response. Diane thinks it's best if. Diane. I let the name hang there. So Diane decides who lives in your house now? It's our house. Is it? Something shifted in his voice, a crack in the armor. What's that supposed to mean? It means I remember things, Dad. Things Grandma told me when I was little. About that house, about who it really belongs to. Don't. His tone turned sharp. Don't bring my mother into this. Why not? Does she know you didn't come to Mom's funeral? Does she know you're refusing to help your own granddaughter? Does she know you laughed at Ethan for having a job? My mother is 80 years old. She doesn't need to be bothered with. Then you better hope I don't need to call her. He hung up on me. I stared at the phone. My hands had stopped shaking. For the first time in 20 years, I'd pushed back. And I'd heard something in my father's voice that I hadn't expected. Fear. I didn't realize Ethan was awake until I heard him sniffle. He was sitting in the back seat, still in his Starbucks uniform. The green apron was stained with coffee, and there was a fresh red mark on his hand, another burn from the espresso machine. He must have gotten back from his shift while I was on the phone, and I hadn't even noticed. He'd heard everything. Mom, his voice cracked. Did Grandpa really say that? About my job? I turned around to face him. The parking lot lights cast orange shadows across his face, and I could see the tear tracks on his cheeks. Ethan, I work really hard. He was trying not to cry, but his shoulders were shaking. I wake up early. I do everything they ask. My manager says I'm one of the best baristas she has. I know, baby. Grandma. He stopped, swallowed. Grandma always said she was proud of me. She said working hard was nothing to be ashamed of. She said I was just like you. She did say that, every time she saw you. But Grandpa, he wiped his face with the back of his hand. He didn't even come to her funeral, Mom. He didn't help when she was sick. And now he's making fun of me for having a job while we're living in a car. I reached back and took his hand, the one with the burn mark. I know it hurts, I said. But listen to me. Your grandmother was proud of you. She told me that every single day. And the man who couldn't bother to show up at her funeral doesn't get to define your worth. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, Who's this grandma you mentioned on the phone? The one who told you things about the house? I hesitated. I'd never told him about his great-grandmother, never told him about the woman who actually owned the house my father lived in. But maybe it was time. That's your great-grandma, I said. Grandma Margaret. And I think it's time you knew about her. The next morning I called my father one more time. He answered with a sigh. Sienna, I already told you. I have one question. What? Does Grandma know? The silence that followed was different from before. It stretched longer, heavier. Know what? His voice had changed. Guarded now. Does she know you didn't come to Mom's funeral? Does she know you refused to let your granddaughter and great-grandson stay in her house? Does she know you mocked Ethan for working? My mother doesn't need to hear about any of this. She's 80 years old and... She loved Mom, didn't she? Grandma always said Mom was the best daughter-in-law she ever had. Sienna. She was furious when you had the affair. I remember. I was 18, but I remember the things she said to you. That was 20 years ago. Was it? Because I'm pretty sure she never forgave you. And I'm pretty sure if she found out about all of this, the funeral, the house, the way you talked about Ethan, she'd have something to say about it. My father's breath came harsh through the phone. You wouldn't. I don't want to. I'm asking for 2 weeks, a corner of your house, a place for Ethan to sleep and study. That's it. I already said no. Diane, then I hope you're ready for Grandma to find out what kind of man her son has become. He hung up without another word. I lowered the phone and looked at Ethan, who was watching me from the passenger seat. Great-Grandma, he said slowly. She owns the house Grandpa lives in? She does. Or at least, she used to. I'm not sure about the paperwork now. And she loved Grandma Linda? Very much. She told me once that your grandmother was like a daughter to her. Ethan was quiet. Then, are we going to call her? I stared at my father's contact one more time. The man who'd hurt my mother, who'd abandoned me, who'd laughed at my son. Yeah, I said. I think we are. That evening, I drove out to my father's neighborhood. Ethan was asleep in the back seat, exhausted from another 8-hour shift. I parked on a side street, about a block away, where I could see the house without being seen. The colonial two-story looked exactly as I remembered it. White siding, black shutters, a manicured lawn that Diane probably paid someone else to maintain. 2 luxury cars sat in the driveway, a Mercedes and a BMW. The porch light was on, casting a warm glow that made everything look perfect. Welcoming. What a lie. A memory surfaced. Me, 10 years old, walking through that house with Grandma Margaret. She'd held my hand and pointed to the crown molding, the hardwood floors, the bay window in the living room. This house is mine, Sienna, she'd told me. I let your father live here because he's my son. But it belongs to me. And someday when you're older, it'll be yours. I remembered asking why Dad didn't have his own house. Grandma had smiled, but there was something sad in it. Your father has always needed someone to take care of him. First me, then your mother. Now. She'd trailed off, shaking her head. Now Diane, I thought, finishing the sentence 29 years later. Another memory. Grandma sitting with my mother in this very house after the affair came out. Mom was crying, and Grandma was holding her hands. Linda, you are the best daughter-in-law I could have asked for. I'm so sorry my son did this to you. You deserve so much better. My mother had loved Grandma Margaret, and Grandma had loved her back more than she'd ever loved Diane. I stared at the house. 4 bedrooms, 3 of them dedicated to a 16-year-old's hobbies, and somewhere inside, my father slept comfortably in a home he'd never paid for, while his grandson slept in a parking lot. Did the house still belong to Grandma? Or had she signed it over at some point? I didn't know, but I knew someone who might. Uncle Thomas picked up on the second ring. Sienna, is everything okay? It was the first time in months anyone had asked me that, and actually sounded like they meant it. Thomas was my father's younger brother, a real estate attorney who'd always been kind to me, even when the rest of the family pretended I didn't exist. He was also the only person from my father's side who had come to my mother's funeral. Uncle Thomas, I need to ask you something. About Grandma's house. Silence. Then, why? I told him everything. The bankruptcy, the eviction, the car, my father's refusal, the things he'd said about Ethan. When I finished, Thomas let out a long breath. Your father said that? About Ethan's job? He said the kid makes coffee for a living like it was something shameful. Ethan heard the whole thing. My God! Thomas's voice was heavy with disgust. That boy wakes up at 4 in the morning to help your family and Richard mocks him for it? Uncle Thomas, I need to know. The house. Is it still? Sienna, I have to tell you something. He paused, and I heard him close a door. Your grandmother was furious when Richard didn't show up to Linda's funeral. She called me that night, crying. She said, Thomas, I raised a monster. Linda was like a daughter to me, and my son couldn't even pay his respects. My throat tightened. She never forgave him for the affair, Thomas continued. She tolerated Diane for Richard's sake, but she never accepted her, and when she heard about the funeral, he trailed off. She's been waiting, Sienna, waiting for the right moment. The right moment for what? To hold him accountable. She asks about you and Ethan all the time. She knows more than you think. But the house? Still in her name, 100%. Richard has been living there rent-free for 30 years. He's never paid her a single dollar. My heart pounded. Call her, Thomas said. She'll want to hear this. And Sienna? She's going to be very, very angry. I stared at Grandma Margaret's number on my phone for a full minute before Ethan spoke. Mom, Uncle Thomas said Great-Grandma loved Grandma Linda. He said she asks about us. He was sitting up now, fully awake. Call her. I want to know about her. My finger hovered over the screen. I hadn't spoken to Grandma Margaret in over a year. Not because I didn't want to, but because every time I thought about calling, I felt like I'd be bothering her. She was 80 years old. She didn't need my problems. But Uncle Thomas's words echoed in my mind. She's been waiting. I pressed the call button. She answered after 2 rings. Sienna, is that you? Her voice was exactly as I remembered. Sharp, clear, no trace of frailty despite her age. Hi, Grandma. I'm sorry I haven't called in so long. Don't apologize. I know you've been through hell. A pause. I miss you, sweetheart. And I miss your mother. Linda was the best daughter-in-law I ever had. Did you know I still have her photo on my nightstand? I couldn't speak. Tears were already streaming down my face. Grandma, Thomas called me. He told me what's happening. He told me what Richard said. Of course he had. Grandma, I didn't want to burden you with… Burden me? Her voice hardened. My grandson refuses to help his daughter and great-grandson while they're living in a car? He didn't come to Linda's funeral? And he mocked that boy for working? Ethan, I managed. His name is Ethan. I know his name. Linda talked about him constantly. She said he was the hardest-working young man she'd ever met. She was so proud of him, Sienna, so proud. Ethan was crying now too, silently, listening to every word. Grandma, I don't know what to do. We don't have anywhere to go and Dad won't… Listen to me. Her voice cut through my rambling. Richard doesn't own that house, I do. He's been living in my house for 30 years without paying me a penny, and he has the audacity to turn away my great-granddaughter, to laugh at my great-great-grandson for having a job. I heard her take a breath, steadying herself. When is that girl's birthday party? Olivia? Next Saturday, why? Because I'm going, and so are you, and so is Ethan. Grandma, Dad didn't invite us. I'm inviting you. I'm the owner of that house. My invitation is the only one that matters. Did you hear that? When Grandma said she still keeps my mother's photo on her nightstand? For 20 years, I thought I was alone in this family. I thought everyone had forgotten about my mom, about what my father did to her, about how she spent 2 decades carrying that heartbreak. But Grandma never forgot. She never stopped loving her. And when she heard about Ethan, about how hard he works, about how my father laughed at him, her voice changed. I'd never heard her so angry. What do you think she's planning? What's going to happen at that birthday party? Let me know in the comments what you think is coming. And if you're still with me, hit that like button so I know you're here. We're about to get to the part I'll never forget. Now, let me tell you about the day of the party. 3 days before Olivia's sweet 16, Grandma called again. You're coming to the party, she said, no question in her voice. Both of you. Grandma, Dad will make a scene. He'll try to throw us out in front of everyone. Let him try. I don't have anything to wear. Neither does Ethan. We've been living in our car for... I know. I've already spoken to Thomas. He's bringing clothes for both of you. Something simple, something dignified. You're not going there to impress anyone, Sienna. You're going there because I asked you to. I hesitated. Why? Why do you want us there so badly? Because I want to see my great-great-grandson. Linda told me so much about him. She said he was special, and I believe her. Grandma's voice softened for just a moment. And because that boy needs to know his grandmother would have been proud, I want to tell him myself. My chest ached. Grandma, Ethan's nervous. He's afraid Grandpa will humiliate him again. Then tell him what I told you. I'm the owner of that house. Richard lives there because I allow it. If anyone tries to humiliate my family and my home, they'll answer to me. The day before the party, Uncle Thomas dropped off the clothes. A simple navy blue dress for me, wrinkled but clean, borrowed from a shelter donation program, which he'd quietly arranged. A white button-down shirt for Ethan, borrowed from one of Thomas's younger colleagues. Ethan tried it on in the car, checking his reflection in the rearview mirror. "Do I look okay?" he asked. "You look perfect." He tugged at the collar. I asked my manager to switch my shift so I could have the day off. She said yes. She even wrote me a letter. A letter? A recommendation letter. For college applications. She said I'm one of the most dedicated employees she's ever had. He paused. I wanted to show Great-Grandma, so she knows I'm not what Grandpa said I am. I reached over and straightened his collar. She already knows, Ethan, but I think she'd love to hear it from you. The party was everything I expected, and nothing I was prepared for. Ethan and I pulled up to the house in our beat-up Honda, the same car we'd been sleeping in for weeks. The contrast was almost laughable. Luxury cars lined the driveway. Mercedes, BMWs, a Lexus SUV. The lawn had been freshly manicured, and through the wrought iron gate, I could see the backyard transformed into something out of a magazine. Pink and white decorations everywhere. String lights draped between the trees. A massive banner reading, "Happy Sweet 16 Olivia," hung across the back of the house. Round tables covered in white linen, a tiered cake, a DJ booth. 50 people, maybe more, milling around in cocktail dresses and tailored suits. And there we were, me in my borrowed navy dress, slightly too big, Ethan in a white shirt borrowed from a stranger, his hands still showing faint burn scars from the espresso machine. We didn't belong here. Everyone would know it the second they looked at us. "Mom?" Ethan's voice was tight. "Are you sure about this?" "Great-Grandma asked us to come. That's all that matters." We walked through the gate. It took about 30 seconds for someone to notice us. Then the whispers started. I saw my father across the yard, laughing with a group of guests, a champagne flute in his hand. He was in his element, charming, polished, the perfect host. Then his eyes swept toward the entrance and landed on me. His smile vanished. He said something to the guests and started walking toward us. Diane appeared beside him almost immediately, her face twisted with barely concealed rage. "What are you doing here?" Diane hissed as they approached. "And why did you bring him?" I kept my voice calm. "Grandma Margaret invited us. She has no right to invite anyone to our house." I looked at Diane, really looked at her. "Your house?" I said quietly. "Are you sure about that?" Before she could respond, we all heard it. A car door closing. Footsteps on the pavement. I turned toward the gate. Grandma Margaret had arrived. My father grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the side of the house, away from the main party. But we weren't far enough. Guests could still see us. Some were already watching. "Sienna." His voice was low, dangerous. "I told you not to come. And I told you Grandma invited me. This is Olivia's day. You're not going to ruin it." Diane stepped closer, her heels sinking into the grass. "You need to leave, both of you. Now." "We're not going anywhere." My father's eyes flicked to Ethan, who stood rigid beside me, his jaw tight. And you brought him. Richard's lip curled. The coffee boy. What, did you want to show everyone what a great job you've done raising him? I felt Ethan flinch. Dad, homeless. My father's voice rose, and more heads turned our way. Living in your car. Husband left you. Mother died. Company fired you. And this is what you have to show for it? A kid who makes lattes? Several guests had stopped pretending not to listen. I saw phones coming out. Sienna, do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Showing up here like this? People are going to think. Think what, Richard? The voice came from behind us, clear and sharp as a blade. My father spun around. Grandma Margaret stood at the edge of the patio, a worn leather briefcase in her hand. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but the way she held herself made her seem larger. Behind her, Uncle Thomas had materialized, his expression carefully neutral. The entire party had gone silent. Even the DJ had stopped the music. Mom. My father's voice cracked. What are you doing here? Grandma didn't answer him. Instead, she walked straight past him, past Diane, past the gawking guests. She stopped in front of me and pulled me into her arms. My girl, she whispered. I'm so sorry I wasn't there sooner. Then she released me and turned to Ethan. And you. Her eyes swept over him, the borrowed shirt, the burn scars on his hands, the exhaustion written in every line of his young face. You're Ethan, Linda's great-grandson. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. Grandma took his hands in hers. Your grandmother told me everything about you. She said you were the hardest worker she'd ever known. She said you woke up before dawn to help your mother. She said you never complained, not once. Tears were streaming down Ethan's face. She was so proud of you, Grandma said, loud enough for everyone to hear. And so am I. The silence that followed was deafening. 50 people stood frozen in that perfect backyard, champagne glasses suspended mid-sip, conversations abandoned. Every eye was fixed on the small, silver-haired woman who had just walked into the party like she owned the place. Which, I was beginning to understand, she did. Grandma released Ethan's hands and turned to face my father. Richard, her voice carried across the yard without her raising it. Would you like to explain something to me? My father's face had gone gray. Mom, this isn't the time. You didn't come to Linda's funeral. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Linda was married to you for 18 years. She gave you a daughter. She loved you despite everything you did to her. And when she died, you couldn't be bothered to pay your respects because Olivia had a piano recital? I saw guests exchange glances. Whispers started up again. Mom, please. I'm not finished. Grandma took a step toward him, and I watched my father, 64 years old, 6 feet tall, actually step back. Your granddaughter and great-grandson have been living in their car. Did you know that? Sleeping in parking lots. Ethan wakes up at 4 in the morning to go to work, then studies for his SATs under streetlights. And you refuse to help them? There wasn't room. There wasn't room? Grandma's voice finally rose, sharp and cutting. In a 4-bedroom house? Your stepdaughter has 3 bedrooms for her hobbies, and you told your own flesh and blood there wasn't room? Diane stepped forward. Margaret, with all due respect, I'm not speaking to you. Diane's mouth snapped shut. And another thing. Grandma turned back to Richard. Thomas told me what you said about Ethan, about his job. My father's face went from gray to white. You mocked that boy. You laughed at him for working, for helping his mother survive. Grandma's voice trembled with barely contained fury. That child has more dignity in his little finger than you've shown in your entire life. The whispers had become a steady murmur now. I could hear fragments drifting across the yard. Didn't go to the funeral? Living in a car? Really? Mocked the kid for having a job? My father's carefully constructed image was crumbling in real time, and everyone was watching it happen. Mom. Richard's voice had taken on a pleading note. Can we talk about this privately? Please? Privately? Grandma laughed, but there was no humor in it. You humiliated Sienna and Ethan publicly. You mocked that boy in front of his mother. You told your daughter she wasn't welcome at her own sister's birthday party. Why should you get the courtesy of privacy? This is my house. No, Richard, it isn't. The murmurs stopped. The silence was absolute. Diane stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. Now wait just a minute. This is our home. We've lived here for 30 years. Grandma's voice was ice. You've lived here for 30 years, rent-free, in a house that belongs to me. That's not, Diane started. Be quiet. Grandma didn't even look at her. You're the woman who broke up my son's first marriage. You don't get to speak to me about what's fair. The crowd erupted in whispers again. I saw several people filming now, phones held up openly. A young voice cut through the noise. Dad? What's going on? Olivia had appeared at the edge of the gathering, her sweet 16 tiara slightly askew. She was looking between Grandma, our father, and me with complete bewilderment. Who is she? Olivia pointed at me. Why is everyone saying she's your daughter? My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He had no answer, because the answer was too ugly to say out loud. He had spent 16 years pretending I didn't exist, and now his perfect illusion was shattering in front of everyone he'd been trying to impress. Grandma Margaret opened her worn leather briefcase. The movement was slow, deliberate. Every person in that backyard watched as she pulled out a stack of papers and held them up for everyone to see. This is the deed to this house, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent crowd. Registered in my name, Margaret Elizabeth Bellamy. It has never been transferred, it has never been sold, this house belongs to me. My father's face went completely white. Mom, you promised this house would be mine. I said it would be yours when you deserved it. Grandma's eyes were hard as flint. Do you deserve it, Richard? After everything you've done? You cheated on Linda. You abandoned your daughter. You didn't come to your ex-wife's funeral. You refused to help Sienna when she was homeless. And you mocked your own great-grandson for working. She let each accusation land like a blow. You've been living in my house for 30 years, rent-free, while behaving like this. Do you truly believe you deserve to own it? Uncle Thomas stepped forward. His voice was calm, professional. A lawyer delivering facts. I'm a real estate attorney. I can confirm that this property remains solely in our mother's name. Richard has no legal claim to it. He's been permitted to live here as a guest. Nothing more. The crowd had begun to disperse now, some people backing away, others clustering in small groups to whisper. I saw at least a dozen phones recording. Dad? Olivia's voice trembled. What does this mean? Is this not our house? My father said nothing. It was Grandma who answered. It means, child, that your father has been living a lie, and it's time for the truth to come out. She turned to me and her expression softened. Sienna, Ethan, you're moving into the downstairs bedroom, tonight. You can't do this. Diane's voice was shrill, cutting through the stunned silence. This is our home. Olivia needs those rooms. Grandma didn't even look at her. Sienna, Ethan, you'll take the guest room on the first floor. There's a desk, a proper bed, and a bathroom. It should be enough for now. Mom, please. My father reached for her arm. Grandma stepped back, out of his reach. Don't touch me. Her voice was quiet, but lethal. You've had 30 years to be a decent human being, and you've failed at every turn. What about Olivia? Diane grabbed her daughter's arm, pulling her close. She has her art studio, her library. She needs those spaces. Olivia needs one bedroom. Grandma's tone brooked no argument. Like every other teenager, she doesn't need 3 rooms for hobbies while her nephew sleeps in a car. She turned to Ethan. You, she said, her voice softening. You need a real place to study, to sleep, to rest after working those long shifts. Your grandmother would have wanted that for you. And so do I. Ethan couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears still streaming down his face. Uncle Thomas spoke up again, his lawyer voice back in place. If Richard and Diane refuse to comply with the property owner's wishes, I can assist my mother in initiating formal eviction proceedings. Under Oregon law, they would have 30 days to vacate. That is the legal right of any property owner. Guests were leaving now, slipping away quietly. No one was saying goodbye to my father. No one was offering congratulations to Olivia. The party was over. I stepped closer to Richard. I didn't want this, I said quietly. You could have given us 2 weeks. That's all I asked for. 2 weeks and none of this would have happened. He didn't respond. Didn't even look at me. Diane pulled Olivia toward the house, both of them crying. I watched my father stand there, alone in his perfect backyard, surrounded by empty tables and abandoned champagne glasses. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel sorry for him. My father tried one last time. Mom, his voice cracked. Can we please discuss this in private? This is humiliating. Humiliating? Grandma's eyes flashed. You humiliated Sienna by calling her a failure in front of your guests. You humiliated Ethan by mocking his job. You humiliated yourself by choosing a piano recital over your ex-wife's funeral. Don't talk to me about humiliation. I can explain. You've had 20 years to explain. I'm done listening. Diane stormed out of the house, Olivia trailing behind her. The girl's mascara was running, her tiara discarded somewhere inside. Her sweet 16 had become a nightmare, and I could see she didn't fully understand why. Grandma Margaret, Olivia's voice was small, confused. I don't understand what's happening. Who is Sienna? Why does everyone keep saying she's my sister? The anger in Grandma's face softened just slightly. Child, that's not your fault. Your parents chose to lie to you about your family, but Sienna is your half-sister. She's Richard's daughter from his first marriage, to a woman named Linda, who died 8 months ago. Your father didn't tell you about any of this because he wanted to pretend his first family never existed. Olivia turned to our father. Dad, is that true? Richard said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Olivia looked at me then, really looked at me, took in my borrowed dress, my tired eyes, the exhaustion written into every line of my face. You're my sister? She whispered. Half-sister, I said gently. But yes. And you were living in your car? While I had 3 bedrooms? It's not your fault, Olivia, you didn't know. Her face crumpled. I'm so sorry. Grandma placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. Your grandmother Linda was the kindest woman I ever knew, she told him quietly. She would have been so proud of who you've become. Don't let anyone, especially Richard, make you doubt that. Ethan nodded, wiping his face with the back of his hand. Thank you, he managed, for saying that. I'm not just saying it, I mean it. Did you see the moment when Grandma told Ethan that his grandmother would have been proud? He broke down. My 17-year-old son, who had spent weeks waking up at 4 in the morning, working 8-hour shifts, never complaining, he finally let himself cry. Because for the first time since my mother died, someone from my father's family acknowledged him, told him he mattered, told him his grandmother's love wasn't forgotten. And Olivia. She had no idea about any of this. She didn't know I existed. She didn't know our father had skipped a funeral for her piano recital. She was just a kid caught in the middle of her parents' lies. Here's my question for you. Should I forgive my father? After everything he's done? Or are some boundaries necessary for survival? Tell me what you think in the comments, and if you want to hear how this ends, stay with me. We're almost there. The party was completely over. The last guests filtered out through the gate, many of them pausing to squeeze my hand or pat Ethan on the shoulder as they passed. A few women I'd never met hugged me, murmuring words of support. I had no idea Richard had another daughter, one of them said, shaking her head. He always talked about his family like you didn't exist. That's because, to him, I didn't. A neighbor, A man in his 60s who'd apparently known my father for 15 years stopped in front of Ethan. "Son, I heard what your grandfather said about your job." He looked directly into Ethan's eyes. "Working hard at your age, helping your mother like you do? That's something to be damn proud of. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." "Thank you, sir," Ethan managed. The man nodded, then turned to walk away. As he passed my father, he didn't say a word, didn't even look at him. That's when I noticed my father was still standing in the same spot, alone. Empty champagne glasses and abandoned plates surrounded him, remnants of a celebration that had imploded. The banner still hung above him. "Happy Sweet 16, Olivia." It fluttered in the evening breeze, mocking him. Uncle Thomas appeared at my elbow. "The video's already spreading," he said quietly. "Someone posted it to the neighborhood Facebook group. Another person shared it on Twitter." He paused. "People are not being kind to Richard in the comments." I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vindication. I felt tired, just tired. "I didn't want this," I said. I know." Thomas put a hand on my shoulder. "But he made his choices, 30 years of choices, and now he has to live with the consequences." Diane had disappeared inside the house with Olivia. I could hear crying through the open windows. The Happy Sweet 16 banner finally tore loose on one end, dangling at an angle, buffeted by the wind. Nobody bothered to fix it. We moved into the downstairs guest room that same night. It wasn't much. A queen bed, a desk by the window, a small bathroom attached. But after 3 weeks of sleeping in a car, it felt like a palace. Ethan sat down at the desk and ran his hands over the surface, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "I can study here," he said softly. "I can actually sit at a real desk and study." "You can." He opened his backpack and pulled out his SAT prep book, dog-eared and wrinkled from being read in parking lots under streetlights. He set it on the desk, smoothed the pages, and just stared at it for a moment. Then he pulled out something else. A folded piece of paper. "My manager wrote this," he said, handing it to me. "The recommendation letter, for my college applications." I unfolded it and read the first few lines. "Ethan is one of the most dedicated and hardworking employees I have ever had the privilege of managing. Despite facing personal challenges that would have broken most adults, he has never once complained, never missed a shift, and consistently exceeds expectations." My throat tightened. Grandma appeared in the doorway. She was carrying something, a framed photograph. "I thought you might want this," she said, handing it to me. It was my mother, a picture I'd never seen before, younger, laughing, standing in the garden of this very house. She must have been about my age in the photo. "That was taken the first year she was married to Richard," Grandma said, "before everything went wrong. I've kept it all these years. She was such a light in this family." I placed the photo on the nightstand. "We'll put it somewhere special," I said. Grandma nodded, then she turned to Ethan. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you," she said again. "Don't ever forget that." Ethan wiped his eyes. "I won't." Uncle Thomas called later that evening. "Good news, your unemployment benefits were finally approved. Back pay for 5 weeks should hit your account within the next few days." For the first time in months, I let myself breathe. A week later, my father knocked on my door. I was alone. Ethan was at work, a shorter shift now that he didn't need to worry about gas money. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Richard stood in the doorway, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The confident, charming man who had laughed at my son was gone. In his place was someone smaller, diminished. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He sat down on the edge of the bed, clasping his hands between his knees. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. "I'm sorry." His voice was rough. "For what I said, about Ethan, about his job. I shouldn't have—" "What exactly are you sorry for, Dad?" He looked up. "What do you mean? Are you sorry because you hurt us? Or are you sorry because you got caught?" Silence. "I was under pressure," he finally said. Diane was upset, and the party, and you didn't come to Mom's funeral. His jaw tightened. You didn't help with her medical bills. You didn't even call to see how she was doing when she was dying. And when Ethan and I were living in our car, when your grandson was waking up at 4 in the morning to work, you laughed at him. Sienna, Ethan heard you, Dad. He heard his grandfather mock him for trying to help his family survive. Do you have any idea what that did to him? Richard's eyes dropped to the floor. I didn't think. No, you didn't. We sat in silence for a while. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. What do you want from me? And there it was. Not I'll change, not I'll do better. Just, what do you want? He still didn't get it. I don't want anything from you, Dad. I just want you to understand why I can't pretend everything is okay. He nodded slowly. Started to say something. Stopped. Then he stood up and left without another word. 3 weeks after the party, everything started to fall into place. I got a job offer. A small interior design firm in the next town over. Not my old salary, but enough. Enough to rent a 1-bedroom apartment for me and Ethan, enough to start over. Enough. The unemployment back pay came through. $3,200. I used it to pay off the last of Derek's credit card debt. It felt like cutting a chain that had been wrapped around my neck for 2 years. Ethan took his SATs. When the scores came back, he was in the top 15% nationally. His Starbucks manager had written him a glowing recommendation letter, and he'd been promoted to shift supervisor, the youngest one in his district. Mom, he said, showing me the score report, do you think Grandma would have been proud? She was always proud of you, baby. Always. The day before we moved out, Grandma called me to her room. Sit down, she said, patting the bed beside her. I did. I've been thinking about the future, she said, about this house, about what happens when I'm gone. Grandma, you don't have to. Hush, let me finish. She took my hand. I'm rewriting my will. Richard won't inherit this house. It'll go to you and Ethan. I don't need. This isn't about need. It's about what's right. She squeezed my hand. Your mother loved this house. She was happy here once, before everything fell apart. I want it to stay with people who will honor that memory. I couldn't speak. You've been through so much, Sienna. Derek, your mother, the bankruptcy, Richard's cruelty, all of it. But you never gave up. You never let it break you. She smiled, her eyes bright with tears. Linda would be so proud of the woman you've become. I hugged her then, this tiny, fierce woman who had stood up for me when no one else would. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. Thank me by living a good life, she said. That's all I ask. The day I moved out, I sent my father one final message. Dad, I want you to know that I don't hate you. I spent too many years hoping you'd change, hoping you'd see me, hoping I could earn a place in your new family. I'm done hoping. Grandma gave us a roof when you wouldn't. She told Ethan he was worth something when you mocked him. She remembered Mom when you couldn't even show up to her funeral. I'm not cutting you off out of anger. I'm doing it because I need to protect myself and my son. If you ever truly change, not because you're embarrassed, but because you realize what you've done, you know how to reach me. Until then, this is goodbye. He never responded. Diane texted me once, a week later, to tell me I was destroying the family. I didn't reply, but Olivia, sweet, confused Olivia, reached out 3 days after we moved. Sienna, I'm sorry about everything. I didn't know about you or about what happened with Dad. I feel so stupid. I had 3 bedrooms for my stuff while you and Ethan had nothing. I'm really, really sorry. I wrote back. You have nothing to apologize for, Olivia. None of this was your fault. If you want to get to know me and Ethan, we're here. Ethan sent her a message too. Hey, it's your nephew. Don't stress about it. I make coffee for a living and there's nothing wrong with that. Let me know if you ever want to hang out. That night in our new apartment, small, simple, ours, I placed my mother's photograph on the bookshelf. We made it, Mom, I said quietly. Ethan and I, we're going to be okay. My son was at his desk, laptop open, working on college applications. He looked up and caught my eye. Mom? Yeah? Thank you. For not giving up. For fighting for us. I walked over and hugged him. I didn't win because of the house, I said. I won because you know that waking up at 4 in the morning to help your family is something to be proud of, no matter what anyone else says. He hugged me back, tight. Grandma would be proud, he whispered. She is, baby. She is. That's my story. My mother died 8 months ago, and my father couldn't be bothered to attend her funeral. Then he mocked my son, my hard-working, dedicated, incredible son, for having a job that helps our family survive. But my grandmother, my 80-year-old grandmother, remembered. She remembered my mother. She remembered what family is supposed to mean, and when it mattered most, she stood up for us. If you've ever lost someone and felt alone, if you've ever been mocked for the work you do, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong in your own family, you're not alone. I see you. Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. There's a link in the description to another story you might connect with. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for being here with me. Until next time.